During a 2-day drive from Canberra, Bill and John visited Bill's friends, Dave and Denise Clark, who live near Port Pirie in South Australia. After boarding the train the previous night, morning saw them crossing the Nullarbor Plain on their way to the settlement of Cook. Cook was once a thriving community but is now a ghost town with a population of only 3 rostered railway workers.
Well, here we are at Cook, about halfway across the Nullarbor Plain. Cook was named after a Prime Minister of Australia, not Captain Cook. Total population, permanent place. That siren is a sign for people to get back on board. Total population about 3 or 4, but at the moment there's about, looks like about 500, mostly passengers from the train.
Back on the train they headed to Kalgoorlie in Western Australia, a distance of 860 kilometres. Kalgoorlie is a mining town established in 1893. Bill and John left the Indian Pacific here and after a brief overnight stop, boarded the Western Australian Prospector for their trip to Perth. Perth was founded in 1829 and is the capital of Western Australia. It is the most isolated capital city in the world and is closer to Jakarta than it is to Sydney. With its population approaching 2 million, Perth is a modern picturesque city with lots of attractions, such as Kings Park, Perth Bell Tower, the Art Gallery of Western Australia, Western Australian Museum, and the Royal Perth Mint. After meeting up with Simon, who had flown in from Jakarta, the boys headed off to Fremantle. Fremantle is Perth's port area and is an interesting mix of beachfront, old port architecture and modern museums, such as the Western Australian Maritime Museum.
The engine comes out of a vessel that was brought out by C.Y. O'Connor, who was the engineer who designed and built the Fremantle Harbour and other engineering projects. It's a steam-driven engine. The boiler's all corroded out now, looking at the engine left. It was originally built in 1891 and been restored, but still going in perfect condition. So we're very proud of this engine.
Fremantle is also famous for its Sunday market, an historic prison that dates back to colonial times. Fremantle is a great place to just wander around, grab a coffee and soak up the atmosphere.
I tried 2 pairs on. Yeah. You know the black one and I like.
One of their days in Perth, the boys caught the train to Mandurah, about 70 kilometres south of Perth. Mandurah was once a fishing village but is now a thriving holiday destination. Mandurah has an impressive marina and is a good spot for a relaxing coffee. After hiring a car, the boys set off on their trip around the southwest. The first stop was Bunbury, 175 kilometres south of Perth. Bunbury was established in 1836 and is a port city servicing the farming and timber areas of the southwest. The Mangrove Boardwalk in Bunbury is a pleasant place for a stroll and another view of the city. With a population around 35,000, Bunbury is the second largest city in Western Australia. Next, the boys headed south to Busselton. Busselton is a small seaside town with its main attraction being the Busselton Jetty. The jetty has been extended a number of times and is now the longest wooden pier jetty in the southern hemisphere, extending 1.8 kilometres from the shore. At the end of the jetty, there is an underwater observation centre providing interesting views of the local marine life.
As you can see, they have used these wooden jarrah pylons to construct the Busselton jetty.
After visiting the jetty, it was time to find a nice shady tree to relax before heading south to Cape Lewin. On the way, the boys stopped briefly at the picturesque Hamelin Bay. Cape Lewin is the most southwestern point in Western Australia and was named after the Dutch ship Lewin, which charted some of the coastline in 1622. The first stop at Cape Lewin was the famous water wheel. The wheel, now encrusted in limestone, was built in 1895 to supply water to the builders of the lighthouse and later to the lighthouse keeper's cottage. The lighthouse was constructed in 1895 and officially opened in December 1896. It is the tallest mainland lighthouse in Australia and is still operating. Tours of the lighthouse are available and it is quite a climb to the top.
So those big magnifying glasses intensify the light from 1,000 candle power to 1 million candle power.
There are impressive views from the walkway at the top of the lighthouse. Cape Lewin also marks the spot where the Southern and Indian Oceans meet and is characterised by raging, swirling seas. After visiting the Cape, the boys stopped briefly at Flinders Bay and spent the night at the beautiful Walpole Inlet. Then they headed inland to the Gloucester National Park. First stop was the Gloucester Tree, named after the Duke of Gloucester, who visited the tree in 1947, when the fire lookout on top was being built. Although the fire lookout is no longer used, visitors can still climb the tree if they dare. Next stop was Beetallup Falls, accessed by a suspension bridge over Beetallup Brook. The area was named after the Aboriginal word bija, meaning sleep, so Beetallup would mean place of rest. Also in the Southern Forest, the boys visited the Valley of the Giants, which is home to the huge old tingle trees. Here you can take the treetop walk to get a bird's eye view of the forest below. The trees here are towering old growth forests, with Grandma Tingle being around 400 years old and about 12 metres around the base. After the coolness of the forest, the boys headed back to the south coast, passing through the scenic township of Denmark and on to the Tonderup National Park, the Alberni. Here the rugged coastline still shows evidence of the split between the continents of Australia and Antarctica 45 million years ago. Two spectacular sights are the Gap, and the Natural Bridge, formed by the pounding waves of the Great Southern Ocean. Also near Albany, the boys stopped to visit the Alberni wind farm, commissioned in 2001. The wind farm produces about 35 megawatts of electricity, providing most of Albany's power requirements. Albany is a port city servicing the local agriculture, fishing and woodchip industries, and has a population of about 30,000. Western Australia's colonial history began here in Albany with the arrival of the brig Amity in Princess Royal Harbour in 1826. After a 6-week journey from Sydney, Major Edmund Lockyer, 19 soldiers and 23 convicts set about establishing a British military outpost to prevent any colonisation by the French. The settlement's original name of Frederickstown never took hold and was renamed Albany in 1832. After a stopover in Albany, the boys headed to New Norcia, north of Perth. New Norcia is the site of an old Spanish mission established by the Benedictine monks in 1846. Visitors are free to wander around the old buildings, but the present-day monastery is off limits. Following a night at the Grand New Norcia Hotel, it was off to Cervantes on the coast. Here the boys visited the beautiful beach at Greenhead and the stromatolites at Lake Thetis. Stromatolites are microbial communities similar to the earliest organisms to appear on Earth. The Lake Thetis stromatolites have been growing for about 3,500 years. The final site on their journey, and the real highlight, were the Pinnacles just south of Cervantes. The Pinnacles are limestone formations contained within Namberg National Park. Thousands of limestone pillars create an eerie alien landscape in the desert. The mechanisms through which the Pinnacles were formed are still subject to controversy. Nevertheless, they are a spectacular sight, receiving 250,000 visitors each year. The Pinnacles is also where Billy Connolly danced nude during his world tour of Australia in 1995. Finally, as the sun sinks slowly in the west, it is time to reflect on a very pleasant trip and say goodbye from the beautiful, wide-open spaces of Western Australia.